Hello, and welcome to the Gamer's Closet. I'm your host, Douglas Weed, and since this is October, we're starting off our Halloween-themed games this month, starting with The Game of Dracula. The Game of Dracula is a game manufactured in 1977 by English game company Waddington Games. The game is for 2 to 4 players, runs for about an hour's worth of game time with a full complement of players, and is rated for ages 7 and up. But let's dig into it a little further, shall we? Game of Dracula was released in 1977 by Waddington Games. It is a 2 to 4 player game and is a roll, spin, and movement game. Waddington Games is a United Kingdom game company and has released many games over the years under the Milton Bradley banner in the United Kingdom. The game was released in 3 editions. The third and final edition was released as an international copy in Canada, so it has been released in English and French. In this game, you are sheltering for the night in this ruined castle. You are horrified to find that it is in fact Castle Dracula, the lair of the bloodthirsty Count Dracula and his pet vampires. The sun is about to set and Dracula is beginning his nightly prowls. Your only hope is to escape from the castle as quickly as possible through one of the doorways marked home. To do this, you will need to move along the yellow stone pathways by throwing the dice. At all times, you will try to keep out of the way of the diabolical Count Dracula and his marauding vampires. If at any time you find yourself in the same room as Dracula, then you will be bitten by Dracula with serious results. The first player to escape from the castle is the winner. This game does come with multiple pieces. It comes with the Castle Dracula board, a green vampire mask, a red Dracula piece, a green vampire piece, a blue vampire piece, 4 player pieces in red, blue, green, and yellow, 1 special vampire die, and 1 red dice. In the 1978 edition, the game dice were replaced with the spinner as pictured here. To set up this game, put the green vampire mask on the side of the board. The green vampire starts on the number 1 vampire perch. Dracula starts in the blood pool in his coffin, as pictured here. The blue vampire starts on perch number 6, and the 4 player pieces are placed in each of their own colors. The board is now ready for the start of the game. Each player chooses a color and then rolls the red dice. Whoever has the highest score goes first, and then the game continues in a clockwise direction. On your turn, throw both dice. The red die tells us the number of pools of blood that Dracula should move round his blood-stained trail. The white dice tells us the number of yellow stones that player pieces must move. Dracula must move in a clockwise direction and cannot move backwards. At some intersections, Dracula can only go one way as shown by the arrow. At other intersections, the arrows show that he has a choice. A player can set off in any direction along the stones, but must make the whole of one move in the direction chosen. A player can turn or proceed straight ahead when they reach an intersection, but remember, you are trying to keep out of the way of Dracula. Please note that the player has the choice of whether to move Dracula first, followed by moving their own piece, or moving their piece first, followed by moving Dracula. This can make the difference when the game is underway. If the white dice shows a V, the player does not move their own piece in Dracula, but instead moves a vampire to the appropriate vampire perch indicated by the red die. Vampire perches 1, 2, 3, and 4 are for the green vampire alone. Vampire perch 5 and 6 are for the blue vampire alone. A couple of pathway rolls do need to be mentioned. A player may pass but cannot land on a stone occupied by another player's piece. A player may pass over but cannot land on any of the 6 vampire perches. A player cannot pass either of the 2 vampires. They block the path. In each of these 3 cases, the player must make another move decision to avoid these obstacles. Please note that it is important that the player can have obstacles on all sides and be unable to move the number of indicated numbers on the white dice in any direction. In such a case, they move Dracula as shown on the red die in the usual way, but will not move their own piece at all. It remains where it is. So what happens if Dracula gets you? Castle Dracula has 13 very unlucky rooms. If one of Dracula's moves ends in the same room as a player, that player will be bitten and captured by Dracula. The player also is captured if their move ends in a room occupied by Dracula. A player is only captured when stationary in a room with Dracula. If either Dracula or a player simply pass through a room containing one or the other, the player cannot be caught. If there are two or more players in the same room as Count Dracula, then the player whose turn it is can decide which player will be bitten by Dracula. When Dracula captures a player, he enfolds that player in his cloak and immediately carries them off in the same turn to the coffin vault. Dracula then calls the Green Vampire to the vault, where the captured player now assumes the role of the Green Vampire. From now on, the captured player and the Green Vampire are one. The captured player must don the Green Vampire mask on the side of the board. Dracula takes up his starting position in the coffin, and the Green Vampire now waits in the coffin vault unless a throw by one of the players indicates a move to a vampire perch. Dracula's first victim is taken over by the Green Vampire. All other victims are carried back to the coffin and released on the top of the vault step, from where they can continue their escape when their turn comes around again. When you are taken over by the Green Vampire in the coffin vault, you remain in the coffin vault underneath the Green Vampire figurine. When your turn comes around, if you are still in the vault, then you do not throw the die, but you move the Green Vampire to Vampire Perch 1 and your turn is over. If you've been moved from the vault to a Vampire Perch by another player, then you can begin to move the Green Vampire. You are now captive under the Green Vampire, and you cannot escape from the castle while you are under his evil influence. You must try to escape from the Green Vampire by moving around the stone pathways in order to catch another player. You will, of course, be wearing the Green Vampire mask now. When you are the Green Vampire and you have moved from the vault, you may throw the die in the usual way. You do not move Dracula. Instead, you move the Green Vampire along the stones shown by both die added together. If the white die shows a V, then the appropriate vampire is moved to the Vampire Perch indicated on the red die in the usual way. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Green Vampire, 5 and 6 for the Blue Vampire. So the Green Vampire must still obey the V on the white dice. Vampires are afraid of the light, so the Green Vampire cannot pass over nor land on a stone that is lit by a candelabra. A candelabra does not stop Dracula from getting you. A player who is under the influence of the Green Vampire must escape by catching another player. This is done by approaching, shedding the Green Vampire, and finally retreating as shown in the example here. Any convenient side path can be used by the player in their retreat. The player who has now been caught is now the Green Vampire, and they must wear the mask and try to catch another player when their turn comes. The Green Vampire moves from the position that they were in when they were caught and can immediately re-catch the player who just caught them if the dice allows them to. Remember, though, the candelabra may stop you. Sometimes the Green Vampire may not be able to move the full number of indicated numbers on the dice. If so, they must not move and then pass their turn to the next player. As shown here in the picture are bright orange squares. These are hidey holes. Around the board there are a number of orange hidey holes. If a player throws the number that enables them to land in a hidey hole exactly, they can, if they wish, move into that until their next turn. A player cannot be caught by either Dracula or the Green Vampire while they are in a hidey hole. The Blue Vampire flirts between Vampire Perch 5 and 6 and so blocks the routes out of the castle. He cannot catch you. If on a throw he is blocking your route so that you cannot move the full number towards him, then you will need to move away from him. You do not have to reach the home space exactly on the dice. All you need is a number large enough to get you out of the castle. The first player to escape is the winner. This has been an overview of Game of Dracula. This game is a very well-built game. The art on it looks great. The pieces look great. It's very well built. The game itself is very easy to pick up, very easy to learn. It is very kid-friendly. But that being said, you get a group of veteran gamers, this game can get cutthroat really, really fast. If you haven't played Game of Dracula before, I would recommend looking into it. The game is a little on the rarer side. It runs anywhere from about $20 to $80 online, if you can find a copy of it. It was only produced from 1977 to 1979. The game itself, like I said, is a little on the rarer side, so it is hard to find, but it is out there. The game is
worth playing. It really is. It has a lot of elements to it. It has a lot of backstabbing and cutthroatness to it. So if you haven't played Game of Dracula before, I would extremely look into trying to find this game. I hadn't heard about it until a very nice lady from England brought it to my attention, which I purchased it off of her. Waddington Games is only manufacturing games in England, and the third edition of this game did come out in Canada. But like I said, it is a rare game to find. So if you can find this game, I really would recommend picking this game up, giving it a good look, and I would recommend playing this game. Well, that's it from us here at the Gamer's Closet. We'd like to thank you for checking out our video on Game of Dracula from Waddington Games. If there's a game in the future you'd like us to review or go over, please put in the comments below. Please hit subscribe so that way you can be the first to check out our future content. And as always, please have a great gaming day.